15 years ago, my brother abandoned his secret love child with me and vanished, leaving me to raise her alone. Now, after his wife's death, he's suddenly demanding custody back, but I've uncovered shocking proof of his violent rage issues, and I'm using it to protect my daughter and force him to finally take responsibility for her future. My sibling abandoned his secret love child with me 15 years ago, then attempted to reclaim her after his spouse died. Now, I'm leveraging proof of his rage issues to make him fund her education. Hi there. Recently, my elder sibling Rick, age 44, lost his spouse. She had received a stomach cancer diagnosis approximately 3 years prior and finally succumbed about 2 weeks ago. This situation is quite heartbreaking because merely 4 months earlier, Rick and I also lost our grandmother. She was the person who essentially brought us up since during our childhood, we lost our parents in a vehicle crash. In that same crash, she also lost her spouse. I suppose you could say our existence has been defined by loss throughout, and Rick has never done anything to improve our circumstances. Around 15 years back, he appeared at my residence with an infant and informed me that he required me to care for and raise her. It felt like something from a movie, and naturally I refused because, unlike movies, this is actual life and people criticize you here for even minor things. 15 years ago, I was an unmarried woman in her 20s, still struggling to establish herself professionally. I was just beginning my career in finance, and aside from lacking funds to raise a child, I didn't possess the emotional strength to do so either. But somehow Rick persuaded me to care for her for at minimum a few months. He shared the story, and apparently, he had connected with one of his former high school friends at their reunion, and that's how he ended up with an infant. With tremendous effort, he had succeeded in keeping it hidden from his spouse. But now that the infant was here, neither he nor the child's birth mother wanted to raise her. They couldn't keep the infant with them because Rick obviously resided with his spouse, and having an infant around suddenly would create many questions. And for the mother, she lived quite near her family, and she didn't want them to discover the affair and the infant. That's how Rick ended up contacting me. And when he pleaded with me to care for her for a few months, just until they could locate a suitable couple for adoption, I reluctantly agreed. I was obviously uncomfortable with raising an infant. And I wasn't pleased about keeping such a massive secret, like the fact that my sibling had engaged in an extramarital affair and now even had an infant. But I did maintain the secret because at that time, Rick and I were quite close. Reflecting back, naturally, I regret it now, and my sister-in-law deserved better treatment. I should have been truthful with her and allowed her to leave rather than concealing my sibling's actions. But well, everyone makes errors, and that was my greatest error. For 15 years, I concealed his actions like a fool. And I raised my niece as my own child. And to repay me, he decided to pursue me as soon as my sister-in-law died and began threatening me with legal action on the basis that I was unsuitable to care for his daughter any longer. And now I needed to surrender her custody to him. A few days following his spouse's funeral, Rick appeared at my residence and began inquiring about Mia, my niece. I assumed we were having a casual discussion until he suddenly informed me that now since his spouse had died, he believed it was time that he brought Mia back to live with him so she could spend time with her father and actually become acquainted with him. I was quite stunned when he said this because even though Mia was my niece, I have been raising her for 15 years as my daughter. So naturally, we had formed a strong connection, and I wasn't prepared to release her. So I told him that I would be willing to allow her to stay with him for a few days. But then I wanted her to return home. At that moment, he began arguing with me. He informed me that since he was her biological father, it should be his choice about where she should reside. For 15 years, he had permitted her to stay with me due to personal circumstances. But now that things were settling into place, he wanted his daughter returned. I'm not exaggerating. These were his exact words. So I had to remind him that he didn't permit her to stay with me. He had to plead with me to raise his daughter because he didn't want his spouse to discover his extramarital affair and the infant. That resulted in a massive argument, and immediately he began telling me that he still possessed the emails that I had sent him 15 years earlier during the initial months that I was caring for Mia, and he was definitely going to use those against me. So for context, during the initial months, I had found it extremely difficult to explain to people why I had an infant living with me. And so I kept emailing him about when he would take the infant back because I was afraid of being judged by everyone for being an unmarried mother. In those emails, it was very apparent that I wasn't ready to be a mother to anyone, especially someone else's infant. And naturally, if he presented that in court or something, it wouldn't appear favorable for me. But weighing that against the fact that I have been raising her for the past 15 years, that didn't make any sense whatsoever. I told him that I wasn't frightened, and then he became really personal, and he informed me that regardless, he was going to regain his daughter's custody because he wasn't going to allow an alcoholic to destroy her life. That was an incredibly cruel attack. And honestly, it didn't even make sense because I'm not the alcoholic he was mentioning. Actually, I'm a complete teetotaler, but my on and off partner for the past few years, Nick, has somewhat of a problem. And I thought that it was really malicious to bring that up because he knows that I genuinely love him, and that's why Nick is attending rehab currently. A few months ago, he had an accident, and that's when I stood firm and told him that if he didn't eliminate his drinking habits, we wouldn't be able to create a future together. I have already waited for almost 6 years to marry him. But it's this addiction that's preventing me because I don't want to introduce that into Mia's life. She knows Nick, but she's unaware of his problems. And I have ensured that my relationship has never affected her life. So for Rick to have mentioned that, it was really foolish and insensitive. I immediately asked him to exit my house. And even though he had been threatening me with legal action, I wasn't really scared because I know for certain that I had legally adopted Mia when she was just 1 year old. At the time, her parents had been discussing with a couple who were willing to adopt her, and Rick had even shared the news with me. But then, after months of waiting for her to get adopted, when I actually began thinking about my life without her, I couldn't envision it. So I told him that he could cancel the adoption for the other couple because I was ready to care for her now, and I wanted to raise her as my daughter. I didn't care about what people would think about me as an unmarried mother, and I didn't even care about the finances. Rick had made it very clear to me that he wasn't going to be able to support us financially. That's why he had been planning on putting her up for adoption anyway. But I told him I didn't care about any of that. I was far too attached to Mia by then to let her go. And that's how it's been ever since. I had never even told her that she wasn't my biological daughter because in my heart she is more than that. And I never got married or had children of my own because for me she was sufficient. But despite everything, Rick thought that he could frighten me with a lawsuit and I would simply surrender custody of Mia out of fear. Obviously, I wasn't going to back down, but my only concern was about how I was going to break this to her, because so far, even though she had met her Uncle Rick a few times, she had no idea that he was actually her father. However, I recently discovered that I was the one who had no idea that she knew. As a matter of fact, she has known for the past 3 years now. Because apparently a few months after his spouse was diagnosed, Rick decided to visit our grandmother and began telling her about how he was planning on trying to get custody of Mia after his spouse passed away. His spouse had many struggles with fertility, so eventually they decided not to have any children of their own. But he claimed that he had always felt very hollow without a child. And now seeing how he was going to lose his spouse as well, he needed someone. And he actually thought that demanding that I return his daughter to him was a valid proposal that I would accept. Anyway, obviously my grandma had been quite opposed to that idea, and she had voiced her opinions against it to him. She had told him that he was insane if he thought that was going to work out in his favor, and they had a huge argument. But later on he apologized to her and told her to keep this a secret. So while she didn't tell me anything about this interaction, she did speak to Mia about it, and that's how she finally got to know that I wasn't her mother and Rick was her biological father. It was really difficult for her to process that, along with the fact that Rick had been planning on trying to reclaim her custody from me after he lost his spouse. My grandmother told her not to worry about it or let me know about any of this, but just be on the safe side. She wanted Mia to know the truth, so she wouldn't be taken by surprise if this actually ended up happening. I don't know why she didn't want me to know about it, and I don't think I'll ever be able to find out anymore, but whatever. My grandma actually gave some documents to Mia and told her that in case Rick actually went through with what he had said, these documents would help us out. She had forbidden Mia from examining what those documents contained, and she was quite compliant. So, she didn't ever try to see what was in them either. In fact, she had forgotten about them until recently. She told me about them when I started talking to her about what Rick was planning to do, and she told me that she had already been prepared for a scenario like this by my grandma. Then she brought out those documents from under her bed, and we went through them together. And let me just tell you guys, we have this secured. We don't need to be worried about any sort of lawsuit anymore because all those documents contain evidence of his anger problem. Calling them documents would actually be incorrect. They're basically just screenshots of messages, emails, and similar things from so many people that I've actually lost count now. Most of them are from his spouse, but from those papers, I could also tell that she had reached out to a few of his friends and coworkers, and even they said that he did deal with severe anger issues. They had talked about a few incidents as well that had taken place at work, at parties, and most of them had been triggered by really trivial and minor stuff, but they had been escalated into full-blown fights or even physical altercations by him for no apparent reason. It was crazy to find out about all of this because whenever we would meet him, Rick seemed pretty normal. And even his spouse didn't seem to be someone who was suffering because of his anger issues or whatever. But in the messages and emails that she had sent to my grandma, it was very evident that she was suffering. And even though those messages were from 3 years back, I could tell that it had been going on for a really long time. And that's why finally she had decided to reach out to my grandma and talk to someone about it, because she probably just couldn't do it alone anymore. Even then, I couldn't figure out exactly why she had all these papers and evidence against him because she couldn't possibly have known that he would someday start planning on trying to take her back. I couldn't ask the only people who would know about it since both of them were gone now. So, I decided to take a chance and called up my grandma's attorney and the executor of her will. Luckily, he knew what this was about. And apparently, he even had a copy of all the documents. Apparently, around 5 years back, my sister-in-law had been planning on leaving Rick because for years, he had been treating her horribly, and we are not sure just how far that went. But what we do know is that she had enough at one point, and that's why she had approached my grandma and told her everything. As a woman, she wanted her help in getting a divorce from her grandson. My sister-in-law's own parents had refused to help her and told her that she would have to deal with this one on her own. And since she had been a homemaker, she didn't really have any money for an attorney, which is why she had approached my grandma. My grandma being the person she is, she decided to help my sister-in-law out because it was clear that she was going through a lot. So, she spoke to a bunch of people and found out about how Rick behaved with others. And it was established that he had an anger problem at the time. She had tried very hard to make sure that nobody revealed it to Rick, but someone must have informed him. After he found out, he started begging his spouse and my grandma not to go through with this and promised them that he would do whatever it took to fix his problems, but he just didn't want his spouse to leave him. After a few weeks of discussion, they decided that my sister-in-law wouldn't leave him, but only if he sought professional help. I'm guessing that he did, because she didn't end up leaving him. And my grandma's attorney told me that they never ended up actually filing for divorce. It was shocking that I didn't know so much about my own family, and I felt kind of betrayed, but her attorney reassured me that it was for my own good, because my grandma apparently believed that I was way too sensitive when it came to things like this, and she didn't want me to get worried for everyone. I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not, but it's done, so I'm not going to think about that. Anyway, knowing all of this, I decided to send Rick an email about everything that I knew. And I told him that if he wanted to take me to court, he was free to do so. But then even I would make sure that everyone knew that he was the one who had anger problems. At least I'm not the one who was an alcoholic. It was my partner, and he was in rehab right now. I also told him that I would not just take this to court. I would also publicize it to everybody and make sure that literally every person that he knew found out how he had given up his own daughter after having an affair. And now he wants her back because he feels his life is empty. A few hours after I sent that email, he started flooding me with apologies and told me that he had no idea that I had all of this. He had assumed that after the whole situation with his spouse had led nowhere in the past, they probably would have gotten rid of the evidence as well. But he didn't count on our grandma to have kept it all safe with her, so she could use it against him if the need arose again. He started telling me that his reputation would be ruined, and he took everything back, that I could keep Mia, but he just wanted to be involved in her life more. I gave him the perfect opportunity to do that and told him that so far I had been supporting Mia financially without any complaints because I had signed up for it. But in a few years, she would be headed out for college. And then I wanted him to bear the expenses. Now, we have been arguing about it back and forth for the past few days because he says that I'm asking for too much. Obviously, sending a kid to college is an expensive thing. And even though it's happening in 3 years, he is still not sure about it. I don't understand what he's confused about or what's holding him back, because he is the one who suggested being more involved in Mia's life. And that's what I'm giving him a chance to do. I don't intend on backing down. And I made it very clear to him that if he doesn't pay for her college expenses, I'm going to tell everybody what has been going on. I don't even care about his reputation or anything anymore. I don't even care about the family's reputation because I've been betrayed by pretty much everyone I know at this point. Mia deserves a great future. And until now, we had been planning on taking out a student loan for her. She's a good student, but I'm not sure if she's going to get a scholarship or not. And she plans on going to college out of state for the experience. It's all going to be really expensive, and I do have some money saved up, but now that I have Rick in a corner, I want him to bear the expenses. However, he thinks that I'm being way too harsh on him, which seems ironic because for the past few weeks, he was the one who had been completely heartless with me and no amount of reasoning or fighting with him had led to a conclusion. So now I'm behaving exactly the way he was behaving with me when he had me in a corner. Even though I was well aware of the fact that even if this situation did go to court, Mia would obviously say that she wanted to stay with me, and that would count for something. Besides, I've already had custody of her ever since she was 1 year old. And the emails from the past, and the whole thing with my boyfriend didn't really count for much. I was still really scared because lawyers cost a lot, and I really didn't want to go to court. So, I had still been trying to find an amicable solution for all of us. But now, I don't care. He's not happy about it at all. And lately, he's been referring to this as blackmail, even though I really don't think that's what it is. I look at it as more of a tit-for-tat situation because he'd been doing the exact same thing to me a few weeks back. Either I give up my custody of Mia and let her stay with her father, or he takes this to court and wastes my time and money, which is another weird thing. He has the money to take me to court, but not to pay for Mia's college expenses. Anyway, am I wrong for telling my sibling that he needs to bear the expenses for his daughter to go to college, or I will tell everyone all about his well-protected secrets? Update 1. Hey, so I guess I forgot to talk about a lot of things in my first post. I'll mention it here since a lot of you are curious about how Mia is doing right now. Honestly, when I had told her that I am not her biological mother and that Rick, her uncle, is actually her biological father, and he had given her up to me when he had had an affair and did not want his spouse to find out, and I had been covering up for him for all these years. But now he wants to take her back. I expected her to be surprised, but she wasn't. And then I realized that she had known all along because of my grandmother. I didn't know what to make of it, if I should be thankful to my grandmother or not, but honestly, I don't want to think about it either. I have had good memories of her, and now that she's gone, I don't want to ruin them. She has always done her best to protect me and my sibling and raise us to the best of her abilities. So, even if I don't fully approve of whatever she chose to do in the past, I can't exactly fix it. Mia told me that she had been extremely shocked and had found it very difficult not to talk to me about it in the beginning, but then she didn't want to hurt me and create drama, so she chose to stay quiet until recently. And then she told me that she took a few weeks to think about it. And then she ultimately realized that it made no difference because in reality, I was always going to be her mother. Whether I was biologically related to her or not was secondary. In fact, it didn't even matter to her because all her life, I was the one who had taken care of her. I was the one who had always been there for her, and Rick had mostly just been her uncle. She did not have a father-daughter kind of relationship with him in the slightest. And, to be honest, they were not even close. And even recently, she told me that it was shocking that he thought his life was empty and that he could make it right by trying to take away her custody. She herself wouldn't have ever allowed it to happen, and she would have made sure that even if this did go to court, she made it clear that she wanted to stay with me, her mom. So, that was a huge reassurance for me. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that even if this situation had gone to court, Rick would have lost. The cards were stacked against him from the beginning. And I don't understand why he was ready to throw money on a court case. Or maybe he was just bluffing. Either way, even if this did go to court, he would have wasted a ton of money. So I don't understand why he isn't willing to pay for Mia to go to college right now. Something's definitely wrong with him. But I don't care about that. I just want him to start setting up a college fund for Mia if he wants to make it up to us. I've already told him not to contact me unless it is to come to a conclusion about this. And I've given him until the end of the month to think about it and reach out to me. Then I blocked him. I will only unblock him at the end of the month. Then, if he doesn't agree to set up a college fund for Mia, I'm going to make sure that I post about what he was trying to do. I'm not going to keep covering for him anymore. He definitely does not deserve it. Update 2. So the month ends in 9 days. Until now, Rick had not tried to personally contact us, but today he showed up at my house. Thankfully, Mia was not at home. She was out with her friends, so she did not have to suffer through him. Anyway, when he showed up, I did not want to let him in, but he started begging at my doorstep. And it was really embarrassing to have that happen in public. So then I asked him to come in so at least the neighbors wouldn't get to see what was going on. Once he was inside, he started telling me that the only reason he had even wanted to build a relationship with Mia was because for so many years, just because of his spouse, he hadn't been able to tell his own daughter that he was her father, and it had been eating away at him. That's why he had been bluffing about taking me to court. He wouldn't have done it anyway because it cost a lot of money. He knew he was going to lose. He had only threatened me with the whole email situation and the thing about my boyfriend because he knew that it would scare me into at least agreeing to his terms, and then we could work our way forward. I told him that it was a really stupid idea for him to start off on the wrong foot with me. And I told him that whatever he had done, it had already caused enough damage, and now I don't want to hear his excuses. So then he started telling me that he was planning on starting his own business, and he couldn't just commit that he would take care of Mia's college expenses in the future because he still had to wait and watch how the business was going to do. If it didn't go well, he was going to go broke trying to live up to his promises, and he needed me to understand that. He said that he had already spoken to his seniors at work and they were ready to bet on him and his business, which is why they were coming on board as investors. And suddenly, it all made sense why he did not want any negative stuff about him coming out in public. Of course, he wouldn't have wanted that anyway. But now that he had money riding on him in his business, it was more necessary than ever for him to have a very pristine image and reputation because the firm that he worked in and his seniors, they were pretty serious about this kind of stuff. And the kind of money that they were investing in him was also not an amount to be laughed at. He was pretty much begging me to understand the situation and take back what I had said. It was getting pretty annoying for me to deal with him. So I just told him that I didn't care what he did. I just wanted him to leave. I told him that if he couldn't promise me that he would take care of Mia's college education, he did not need to have a relationship with her anyway. It was he who had said that he would just like to be more involved in her life. I had given him the opportunity to do that, and he had rejected it. After everything that had happened, I did not want to give him any more chances to hurt us. So I began to ask him to leave, but he wasn't even okay with that. He started telling me that this stuff was complicated and he had just made a mistake, but he was not a bad guy. I told him that I honestly didn't care about the kind of person he was. Whatever he had done was stupid and insane, and I did not want him around anymore. I was actually pretty glad that he had decided not to agree to my terms because then we would have to keep in touch with him, and that would have been a total nightmare. He was refusing to leave initially. So then I had to force him and actually push him out. But thankfully, he did leave after basically getting kicked out of my house. Now I just hope that he doesn't try to contact us anymore after today. Update 3. So, it has been 3 months since my last update, and so far Rick hasn't tried to get in touch with us. And I'm really grateful for that because Mia and I have been working on our relationship. I mean, everything was fine between us, but then we realized that we have both been through a lot, and we need to make sure that we communicate more often and more openly. So, that after this, there are no more secrets between us, and it's been going well so far. I even told her all about the episode with Rick, and she seemed to understand my anger. But she told me that she was glad that we are not in touch with him anymore. She agreed that after what had happened, she would never be able to take any money from him or even perceive him the same way. To be fair, she had stopped perceiving him in the same way that she used to when she was younger as soon as she had found out that she was actually his affair daughter. And then once again, the perception had gotten worse after she found out about his anger issues in the documents that my grandma had left. Either way, it doesn't matter because we are not on speaking terms anymore, and we are happy on our own now.